The police killing of Minneapolis resident George Floyd has sparked a global response on the killings of black bodies in the United States. Ark Republic has been covering all of the protests, demonstrations, and rallies that have started in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and have expanded around the world. What we wanted to do is we wanted to now give voice to those who are on the front lines, the protesters. And so we have created a roundtable, 3 discussions in which we will hear from the protesters, why they demonstrate, what do they want, and what do they see as real change. In Roundtable 2, we ask protesters what do they see as substantial and visible, significant, systematic change, and what does it look like when you say defund the police?
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
So let's get started. I wanted to just kind of run this as a conversation, not an interview, and not talking points, just a genuine conversation about what's going on, what led you to even begin protesting. Aside from the obvious, we know that police brutality, we know that racism, all of that. But what is it, and I guess this is my first question, what is it that compelled you to get involved, knowing the safety concerns?
Like I said, I'm in Durham, North Carolina, and it's literally 10 minutes away from the capital, North Carolina, which is Raleigh, which is where the protest that I went to was. And one of the main reasons why I got involved is really I just asked myself, why not? This is a time where there's an ample amount of time to take in data and information, and all I'm seeing is like pain and hurt constantly and lack of accountability. And I figured, knowing the history of protesting and Black issues in America, I was like, why not be a part of the active demanding of the change? And it's like the danger piece. I have a lot of personal perspectives when it comes to protesting because my parents are immigrants and their country had to get their independence through this type of work. So I'm always pro protest. I'm always pro hold the people accountable at critical moments. So I was like, why not? And I'm religious. So I was like, I'm covered. If it's my time, it's my time. But I'm going to do it at a time where I'm doing it for a reason. So that's really why I was like, doesn't seem dangerous to me anyway.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes. We live 4 members in a rather small apartment, New York apartment, 1,000 square feet, and my husband has cancer, terminal cancer, so we are very worried about going outside because of COVID. But I was involved in a sort of roundtable with co-workers, and a Black middle-aged man, 40 years old, very, very down to earth, started crying, sharing his feelings as a parent, bringing up children in America today. And he took one of his children to a protest, and the child couldn't sleep at night because they're afraid growing up being Black in America. And I was watching this roundtable with my husband, and he sort of said, you know what? There are people who have more issues than us. And if we don't stand up, we are going to feel criminal. And we cannot allow feeling criminal. And everybody in the family felt relieved. And we could just go out. And I have to say that it was transformational. I went on June 2nd in Foley Square, and then we marched to Washington Square. Everybody had a mask on. Everybody was respectful. Everybody was chanting. No one touched anybody. And we went to Washington Square in the park. We kneeled down. And of course, we were welcomed by a contingent of maybe 50 police officers, none with masks, or maybe just a few. But the difference between us the protesters and them, was the fact that they didn't have a mask. So it was everything made to look what we are not. We are very well organized. We are very mindful of each other. And we are there just to stand up and make sure that there is no silence. And what was beautiful was that white people wanted to express their views, that there is no silence. Because, and today I went again, so the following day I started going to protests, and today, in order to prepare for this roundtable, I sent an email to Kaia that I wanted to check the pulse of the city. And again, there was a protest in Union Square. And what was obvious was that people wanted to say white silence is violence. There is no way being white in this country and being silent.
Okay, so, I'm sorry. Okay. Marquis,
yeah, I'll chime in just really quickly. It's funny, I smiled when you were introducing yourself because you mentioned sociology, and that was where my bachelor's degree is in. So, which might give you a little look into why I'm so interested in what's happening in the country, even globally at this point. You can't cut that sociology mind off. But I'm seated in the Capitol. I live in Gaithersburg, Maryland, so I'm about 30 minutes or so from DC. And so there was no reason, particularly knowing how people feel about Trump, how I feel about Trump, and to know that people are mobilizing. I'm an educator, so I teach in DC, and the communities that my students come from, right? The parents of my students, like I'm doing it for them because they deserve the change, right? So I found myself going out there a few days and a few different times because I was like, I'm in a prime location within the country to really make change. If people in all 50 states, if people abroad can do it, right here in the nation's capital, I definitely get myself out there.
Okay, great. One thing that I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts about is the participation of white people predominantly in the protest, and from each of your perspectives. Well, let me just get your perspective before I say anything else. So whoever wants to chime in first.
Sure. I was surprised. I'll be honest. Well, for me in my past with advocacy work, especially with Black issues and stuff, like the allyship from white people has always been very surface level. We can stand with you, let's take this picture, or I can sign that petition. But after then, it's like kind of ending there. So it was very, it was nice to see like some of the signage they were using. Like there was an awareness that this is not just like, oh, this is just what's happening right now, but like this is systemic. We're marching because this has been an issue for a while. Like I could tell from the conversations we were having with the protesters, they weren't just people who were not aware of the true deep issues were the minority. They were not the voice of the white people who were participating. So it was very interesting to me, and to see them know that their role in this protest is to be of active protection, because that you are not we felt that they are not brutalized by the police as Black people are. They were standing in front of the front lines, taking the original tear gas things. Now, of course, we're seeing as the protests continue, police are brutalizing anybody. So like that's kind of, changing that kind of thought. But in general, this is a systemic issue for Black people. So it was nice to see them that they're aware that their privilege can be used in a way at the protest to protect others. And while we're out here protesting in the middle of the pandemic, that we still have to protest these issues, that they're like, we're here, we got you. And they brought water, they brought snacks, they were ready with tear gas preparation, all kinds of stuff, because Lord knows what it would have been like if I didn't get the assistance from the lady who gave me water. Like I'm a diabetic, and this is a high stress situation when it goes from peacefully marching to getting tear gas and bullets. So like it was a lot of things that I was grateful for their presence there. Yeah, oh yeah, I got tear gas twice. Like, yeah, it was just a lot going on.
That was the experience with all of you, being tear gassed?
Yeah. No. I was able to be a little quick, so I did get some people and some like irritation of eyes of people I was with. But yeah, definitely, yep, they did it as well to the group that I was with.
I'm sorry, Donna, you were saying?
No, I was saying that I went there in the middle of the day. The first day I went from 1:30 to 4. Then I started going, because I also work and I took a vacation time. I also like to be active on the social media, and I don't want to post something that I should be working, although I'm at home. So I make sure that whenever I'm protesting, it's all covered and it's kosher. So it's lunch hour. It's take the day off. I took half a day off today. And the beauty being in New York City is that we used to have the bikes, but today I discovered that if you let your bike at 5:30 or 5ish, you cannot take it back, although it says the city bike ends at 6. So there are many layers in which people are not encouraged to protest. And there is a lot of intimidation in the sense that there is so much police force out there. And I took pictures. There is no one in the street, or people are just going beautifully with their signs to protest. And you see 20 cars, vans, police vans, and the police officers being there. And again, without masks. And there is something very unsettling. I come from Romania, a police state, and we are sort of used to this, and I feel very uncomfortable to see that I'm prepared to this in a way. This is America. So, America. So I find many common points. So I was just saying how I got involved with this protest, but as Kaia knows, I'm all for changing the power structure the way it is, and the humiliation and the injustice that minorities have been exposed to. But it's a moment of being humbled, because I realized, although I am an immigrant, my skin gives me so much protection. Right. And there is that element before I open my mouth, and you can hear, she's not from here. But the first thing is that they don't stop me the way you are stopped. Right. Because my skin is like a shield, and Ashley is correct.
That's a great point. I wonder, and please give me your perspective. I wonder what the protest would look like now than if it were predominantly Black. Do you guys think that there would be a difference in the treatment, or do you think it's the same?
Oh, we have the historical context of what that would have been, what it was. I believe wholeheartedly it would be different. And another piece, like linking to your original question, like in Raleigh, it was one of the first places to protest reopening the state. And in our state specifically, mind you, 3 weeks ago, there were white men marching with AR-15s, a literal rocket launcher. These are the things that they were walking to the subway with, untouched, unprovoked. So we already know that. I believe wholeheartedly it would be different if it was majority of Black people marching, because they view us as dangerous immediately. That's why we're protesting in the first place, because our skin has become, or is viewed as dangerous, and why we are murdered more often. They're protecting the country, protecting our rights, protecting its people, right? And so if we're looking at the murder numbers from the people who are supposed to protect us, we're obviously viewed as a threat. So it would definitely be more dangerous if it was more Black people and less allies out there.
I agree with that. I think it looks drastically different if you make it majority or pretty much predominantly Black protests. I think, as Ashley mentioned, historically, we understand the need for white allyship. Even we talk about the building of Black institutions, right? We talk about even the civil rights movement, right? In the 60s, we understood the importance of white allyship. And so, yeah, it would definitely be actually. I think even the narrative being painted right now about protesting, right, that it is violent, that it is causing burning, there's rioters, there's looting, right, and then even being able to see, right, if we look very closely, well, some of the people rioting and looting are actually white people. If you take that off the table, right, and you let only Black people get out there, oh yeah, the narrative would be, the angry Black people are burning down the cities and tearing up their communities, and yes, I think it would be drastically different. I think Al Sharpton made a good point as I watched the funeral of George Floyd yesterday. He says, I'm looking, and this particular protest looks different than all the protests I've seen before. Because I'm looking and I'm seeing young white people mobilizing in larger numbers than Black people, which we have not seen. And he mentions, a little white girl pulled on his shirt. And he said, he had a visceral reaction at first, because last time a little white girl pulled on his shirt, that he was afraid that she might call him an expletive. But the little white girl said, no justice, no peace. And so I think having white allyship in the largest number we've probably seen it historically definitely makes a huge difference.
I'm sorry, this is heartening to hear, because all my protests were starting with the protest against the invasion of Iraq, or the protest against Trump.
Mm-hmm.
They're always interracial, and yeah, again, because of my skin color, I never participated to, just a black protest. And what I think it's different this time, and I hear it from all corners, is that people, I think, have suddenly realized the white privilege, what it means. And I think people feel humbled, and it's like, for Christ's sake, we are rock bottom. If we are killing people without anything, just by their color, when are we going to start killing people with a different hair color or eye color, if we are that vicious? So I think people have realized the viciousness of this, the lynching problem.
So first, let me ask, how were each of you called to protest? Like, how did you find out that the protests were going on? Was there an email? Was there a social media blast? How did you get there? And
my daughters pushed me out the door.
Okay.
My daughter said, "You have to go."
I received a DM from a colleague from my university. She was like, "Hey, if you still live in this area, this is where it is." So it was a personal message that was sent to me that was being forwarded on to people in this area.
The first time, the first day we went we actually did a drive-in caravan protest, and then also got out and did the march piece. So for the drive-in caravan, it was actually hosted by the Black Lives Matter DC chapter, and they had a flyer shared to me by another friend I went to school with who lives in the area. And so we would do that. And then all the other days, we really just went down there, right? Because the crowds had gotten so big that we were like, you just pull up, you're gonna see people just walking and you just jump right in. And so, yeah, all the other days it was just like, let's just go, right? And we'll be able to find the groups.
Yes, afterwards, you know the route and you show up. You know where it's going to be at what time, and you just learn.
Now, the reason I'm asking that in particular is because of this thought that there is an insurgence of interlopers, agents, provocateurs. Is that a concern when you go out there? And
yes.
If it is, what is the concern?
Yeah, there's a great deal of concern, and I know how I operate is, before I leave the house, I go on Twitter real quick and search my area, like, okay, Raleigh, Durham. If there's been anybody saying like, hey, the protest that's scheduled today is fake, or if there's rumblings that it's not actually organized by the core organizers of the movement, then you have to check before you go, because they've been disrupting it's very scary to me, actually, and I hope I don't go on too much of a tangent, but after coming home for the protest, I don't watch the news at all because it's crap, but I got on the news to see what they were saying. And at this point, after I had left, after we'd been peacefully walking for like 3 hours, things had turned up because one white person threw a brick through a window, and then everyone was like, okay, we're going to do this looting thing. And they damaged like 30 restaurants or whatever, businesses in downtown Raleigh. But I remember looking at the TV, and the reporter that was reporting this, he was walking with us that whole time. His camera wasn't even on. There was no recording of the protest. But then I see him having the cameraman showing the looting, the damage that's happened, the post-police tear gassing. When things are when the protest is dispersed and there's kind of just a couple people left, there's way less. That was what was advertised. So it's like, I like to check before you leave, because one, now that we've seen more viral videos across the nation of how police officers are acting at these protests, I don't really want to get beat down. It's not my choice. If it happens, then that was my fated journey. But I would prefer not to go out there, especially since my personal intent for out there is not violence. Why I got here is violence. I'm not here to promote the violence while I'm there. So I don't want to get beat down. But I'm like, this is why we have to check, because what's been portrayed on the media has now driven And it's now driven the narrative of how we are now, it's not even about what they're marching for. And it's starting to shine a light away from the actual core issue of why we started this. And like, I just don't want to be a part of that number, period.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. I think, particularly here in DC, I know we were seeing things of like jammers. So like you would be at the protest and like you would lose service. So you wouldn't be able to communicate. And I think that was, something done. We did see undercovers. So like cars that were unmarked or people kind of casually walking through who very well could be affiliated with police. And so, yeah, definitely keeping that in mind. Following the rules, of course, going with groups, checking that if you did get an invite to something, like where did it come from, who invited you, those types of things. Because, yeah, it definitely was a concern. It was a worry, even like leaving protests when curfews are implemented, of like, you might walk past someone you don't think is police, but they're posted up ready to detain people who they see leaving the protest, those types of things. So yeah, it was definitely a concern, but not deterrent, thankfully. So
The same view, it's not a deterrent because you want to stand up, but I do protest with my city bike. So I'm ready to bike away.
Okay,
yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
Definitely smart.
Yeah.
If in a perfect world, if you could have it any way, what would it take for you to be satisfied with what's going on with the protests in with the government response? What would it take for you to say, yes, we did it?
I'm going to say it because I would like Trump to resign, and
Okay.
so that will be what I would like.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is right now we have a terrible situation. I have a legal background, so I'm going to say that what happened in DC to bring federal police to disperse the peaceful protesters, that is against the Constitution. That's a violation of the Constitution, violation of the First Amendment rights, and is tantamount to encouraging civil war. So it's really egregious and illegal at so many levels. And what I fear that if nothing happens, that means many more people are going to be in cahoots and being silent. They are going to be viewed as approving this, and they are going to resist being replaced when the election times comes, because they are going to be involved as aiding and abetting this criminal situation. So your question is terrifying in its implication, Rolanda, because on one hand, I think I would be happy with a change in the police structure, in the way that we have the investigative power. And I would like guns to be taken away from the police power. I would like some systemic changes in how police is organized. I would like, for example, the mayor of DC is powerless right now. I would like mayors to be able to say no to the federal police being brought into their own cities. So anything, I will take anything, any type of systemic change that will reduce police brutality, and it will take some power away from what I consider state-sponsored terrorism. What we are seeing right now in America with the police brutality is state-sponsored terrorism against minorities. So anything that will reduce that will make me very happy. And of course, getting rid of Trump will make me drink in front of you.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question that I have amongst my friends group. And honestly, I say we don't stop until it is finished, to be honest, because it is proven that this is what works, or what we have to force their hand and disrupt their normalcy and disrupt their structure for them to even say, okay, I guess we'll kill a couple less of you. So I don't want to stop protesting until every video we have of an actual cop beating someone to their death or brutalizing them, those cops are arrested and their jobs are removed because these killers are still walking free from cases of last year, a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago. I would like an implementation of all these police departments saying that we are no longer going to be tear gassing citizens when they're not doing anything. Like, there are clear, I personally want the police force defunded. Now that I'm like, it's like this whole system and everything that's happening is releasing so much information I didn't even realize, or just the percentages of state budgets that go to policing, and we're in the midst of pandemic and people are reusing masks. It's like at this duality at the same time, it's showing me that our government and that our elected officials, they're aware of these issues and they did not care, they don't care until their day-to-day is shaken. So I believe that we should continue protesting until police departments are defunded, resources are reallocated, all these murders that we have on tape, because Lord knows how many there are that are not documented. But the documented ones, I would like all those people badges off, removed, and no chance of even if for whatever reason they don't end up charged or in jail, they should not be law enforcement. I don't want to stop protesting until the training for police officers includes more than 8 weeks in actual de-escalation. Like, I don't understand people can enforce the law who don't understand the law, who don't respect the law themselves. I don't understand how people are supposed to be peacekeepers in the community who don't understand de-escalation, who don't understand the communities they are policing. I have extreme issues with the police, but of course the root of the police force is we're just reaping the fruit of this racist white supremacist tree. It's structural. So I don't think we should stop protesting until these people are held accountable. These are accountability protests. We hear you, we see you, and this is why we're here and disrupting your day, disrupting your peace, disrupting your quiet, disrupting your funds, and burning your buildings or whatever. All these after effects, it's because you're not hearing us. And the basic request at the root of our protest is stop killing us. And the fact that we have to protest that is why I don't think we should stop until these things are done, because we've seen people folding. We've seen Breonna Taylor's case reopen. We've seen, I think it's New Jersey, their police force can't tear gas anymore. Like, we see how quickly you can just implement, boom, change, and then people are a little bit calmer. So if you know that it's a possibility and we know that this is the only way we've achieved anything in the past, I don't think we should stop until these actionable steps are taken. And now what's going to happen in November, and people realize that you need to vote in local elections, and your mayor is important, all the way down to your district attorney, all these voting things. These are longevity steps that we can start re-educating people who have been awoken in this movement, but I don't think we should stop protesting until these basic needs are met, because they have not been met for centuries.
Well, Rolanda, like, I don't know, sociology, we look at all the disparities: education, housing, health, criminality, like all of the things. I think particularly on this front, like I've always been the angry Black man who always calls out racism and supremacy when he sees it. And so for me, I always knew it was systemic, right? I always knew it was rooted in policy, right? And it was rooted in practice. And seeing that other people have gotten to the place of like, okay, we don't just want the conviction, right? We don't just want them arrested. We don't just want those 4, those 2, or those whoever their job's going, but we want to overhaul the entire system, right? Because even if we get rid of those 4, we'll be doing the same protests in 3 months, because the system, right, allows for this to continue to happen. And so for me, like Ashley mentioned, it's an accountability thing, right? So when we do talk about cities defunding police, right, we talk about those things, we do look at actual, and then restructuring it, what does community policing look like, right? So like I always have the, criminality teach you that Black people, we have more police present in Black communities, because the stereotypical trope is that Black people are like engaged in criminality more, even though research says otherwise. And so I find it like odd that you would send someone who grew up on the other side of town, in the suburbs, to then go police communities that they're not from, particularly without the knowledge of sociology, without knowledge of criminology, without actual training. So they're taking their stereotypes into those communities, right? And they're perpetuating those things. So yeah, I think when we get to a place of defunding, we get to a place of restructuring and actually doing community policing, we get to a place of holding city council members accountable, mayors on local levels accountable, because a lot of times you realize people don't vote in their local elections, but that makes the most change on the ground, per se. When those things start happening, I think I will be a little bit more at ease with this particular topic. So, yeah.
So why is it that we are starting with law enforcement as the answer to make America this better place?
I'll jump on that one. I think, particularly, like we know, we can hear modern times refer to the new Jim Crow, right? As we think about mass incarceration, right, and police brutality, right? We realize that it stemmed essentially from the loopholes in the 13th Amendment, right? It stemmed from white people not being able to fully let go, right? They just could not yield power. They just could not yield rights, and so I think you start with law enforcement, particularly, like as I mentioned, there are so many areas to tackle social life for Black people, but you start here because these are direct kills, right? We know things like disparities in health and disparities in education are very slow, right? Slow kills for Black people, right? They happen over time. We know law enforcement, right then and there, right? Once you put those handcuffs on you, life done, right? Once you get stopped by that officer and shot in the street, life done. And so I think you start in this place because what we see of modern day policing is what you would have seen, right, in past times of, as you mentioned, like slave patrols, right? Because that's what they evolved from. A lot of people don't know that, right? They're like, we freed slaves, we implemented slave patrols, they just evolved, right? Like most Black people couldn't even serve on police forces in certain states until like the 1970s, right? Even those who were serving on forces in the 50s and 60s could only arrest Black people, right? That was on the books in some southern states. So I think you start here because policing, the nature of, at least in America, is the most pervasive first force into the communities at this time. You can remove them. I think we can begin to like start tackling other structural issues like poverty, like education, like health disparities. But removing that threat of like immediate kill that policing kind of brings with it, I think is a good place to start.
Okay, how do you change a system that at its core is corrupted? I think that's the question that I'm trying to answer. Like,
well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I always talk to my students about in our criminal justice class is, well, what is it that you think police are meant to do? And you always hear, protect and serve and, and things like that. No, what we understand is originally, like we said, they were slave catchers, right? What they are meant to do, they do extremely well. And that's what we have to understand as a society. The police are doing their job. And if you just look at it as a job, that's all there is to that. But when you bring it into context in American culture today, what is the function of the police? It is, the police are meant to interpret the law, see a person doing a thing and interpret whether it is legal or not. Now, when you start getting into force, I'm going to beat somebody up, I'm going to tase them, I'm going to do all of these things. These are the criminal profiles of police have the same criminal profiles as criminals, period. That is, you have to have a certain type of mental perspective to even do it at all. And you also have to be able to, how do you phrase it? You have to be able to kind of sniff out criminal behavior, right? But it's innate. So if I can see it in you, it's because it's something in me also, right? So when we look at what even the police force is meant to do, they are doing it. So when we say defund the police, you can't, yes, definitely you need to have less police on the streets, but I think what we have to also do is reconceptualize what the police is. Maybe they're not police anymore. Maybe we don't call them that because that whole social stigma behind what it is even meant to be a police, a pig, this, a racetrack, all of these different things. Even if you're Black, Latino, or what have you, you still carry that same blue stigma. You see what I'm saying? So, but with the absence of police, who do you call when things go wrong? That's what I want to pose to you. So I'm playing devil's advocate here. I am no advocate.
Can I tell you who you call? You call the Ghostbusters.
And you know what? Maybe that's what we need.
No,
but so I posed that question to you. So if, let's just present a scenario. You're robbed in the park. Mm-hmm. Let's just even say by an undercover police officer. Who can you call? Or what do you do?
Yeah, this is like, you're literally asking questions that I engage with my friends in this discussion, because we are in the generation where we are triggering the shaking of the system. But now it's like, all right, once it's shaken, what do we do, right? And so it's like in situations where, in context background, I have a public health education, and I started working in substance abuse education first before I went to clinical research. So in the times where someone has extreme mental health issues and they snatch your purse, or they slap a random lady in the Starbucks, you call the cops, right? A crime was done. There's no context. There's no understanding. The people who are coming to respond don't understand the situation. So the root of the issue is not addressed. And looping back to the previous question about why do we address policing first, is because the greatest success of our American history is the miseducation of Americans about our history. People don't understand how these issues arise. They just see them as isolated incidents, and then they don't understand the root of the problem, right? So when you say things like defund the police, people are looking around like, well, no, like, we need the police. That's an integral part of who we are and stuff. But then there's a misunderstanding of the root, like we said. So who do you call when someone gets robbed? But then my first thought is like, well, why did that person rob that person? Is it just criminal intent, or is this person suffering from poverty? Is this person in a place where that's how they're taught how to survive, right? So like, I feel like I don't know what it's gonna look like. I don't have the sociology background. I just know that there is a mass miseducation about why the issues in America exist, and the policing and everything is just an exacerbated aspect of the root issues of miseducation of the problems. So it's like, in my perfect world, and mind you, it's not perfect because it's going to be involving, we're going to figure out that those questions. It's like, well, would it be nice if instead of the police coming when your taillight is out, a safety inspector comes, like, hey, I'm going to wait with you while someone brings a light bulb for your car. So it's not this, you don't really need to be charged for this. You don't have to be interrogated for this. Your humanity doesn't have to be questioned in this moment. It's just addressing the issue, and boom, instead of, oh, it's a crime to not have a taillight out, go get them, right? Someone's having a mental health breakdown. It would be great if a social worker could show up on the scene. Like, okay, so like, I've been trained, I now understand that like somebody having a loud outburst, it may not be because they're angry or crazy or trying to kill you. They might actually have schizophrenia and they're suffering from homelessness. Like, there's so much intersectionality in the issues that the police are supposed to address, and they have no understanding at a base level in that unit. And as a country, that people don't understand why these issues are continuing to exist. We still have people who believe that Black people are poor because they don't work hard enough. So it's like the issues like of people's mindsets, and why policing is allowed to continue this way, and why people who support policing are the voices that are heard most, are because people don't understand the history of this country. So I didn't answer any questions. These are things that I discussed. So I'm still trying to be like, what would we do? Because I don't know what I would do, but I know for a fact, like, if someone broke into my apartment, I'm not calling the police. I'm going to call my friends who live closer here. Like, hey, I don't feel safe right now. Because there's a stronger chance, because of how my boyfriend looks, he's a 6'4", dark-skinned man, that when they come to our door that's been hinged open, he will be detained before they even ask who committed the crime, just because of the area where I live. So it's like, when it comes to policing, it has to be the most extreme situation. I'll wait 2-3 hours for my dad to drive up the road to fix my tire before I ask the police. You know what I'm saying? This is the place in the mindset of where we are when it comes to policing. And it's because I do have an awareness of the history and the truth. So I'm just curious, if we emphasize and put money behind actually educating Americans about our history from in school, about the true history, would that shape about 10, 15 years down the road of our understanding of what do we do in crisis when things go wrong, and who do we call? Because I think naturally, when people are actually aware of the truth of the issues, we see this allyship rise in mass, right? This is their awakening. I don't know how this is their awakening, but here it is, right? So I just feel like education is the piece of how we get to the answering your question of who do we call in those situations. And I do think that the police officers need to be renamed, because we're triggered. Police is a negative in every sphere. It doesn't matter how many pictures you show of me kneeling or helping the community. It's negative. So sorry, that was a ramble, but it upsets me.
Okay, because
if I may,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. If I may say something, you asked very difficult questions, Rolanda. First of all, why we want to change the police, and I think Marquis was correct. When we encounter the police, you can die, so it's over. There is no. That's it. You are killed. And in New York City, we had so many, cases of police brutality where, people were trying to answer the phone and killed 25 times, shot at 25 times. So I think that's why we are trying to change the police structure. Of course, it's not just accountability for one person. I think everybody here agrees that the entire police system has to be changed. And how we do that, I think we are chanting defund because I think we want less guns. And I think Kaia now has a better understanding coming from, with my background, Romania. I would never call the police. You don't call them, they are thugs. That's how you knew, whatever. Different type of thugs. Here, indeed, I've been lucky enough not to be put in such a situation, but no, I wouldn't call. Maybe if I don't know. The problem with the police system, I think, in this country is that everything has been defunded. You don't have social workers. You see people in the street who need help, medical help, and why do we call the police? We should not call the police. For a homeless person or for anything, why is that? They are unprepared, untrained. Who are they? So I think it's a very complicated answer. But why do we want that in the first place? We want it because you can get killed.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. I'm gonna. I see you, Marquis. I don't want to think that you think I'm ignoring you, but I would say that Ashley, I was really. You probably gave one of the most succinct answers to that question that I have heard, and I talked to a lot of people about this, and I think that what you're saying is very profound. We tend to call the police for issues that are not necessarily. They don't need police involvement. They don't have anything to do with criminal behavior. A lot of times you may just need help on the highway, but we call the police. And I think that when you were saying what you're talking about is definitely a policy issue, like changing what the police can come out for. You see what I'm saying? Changing what the police's job is. So maybe the jobs, you see, you're not slave catchers anymore. You're not supposed to be, right? So let's redefine what it is that you do. No, don't call the police if, you're just, your kid is acting up. Because they, like you said, Donna, they might die. Don't call the police if you have a flat tire. Don't call the police if it's anything that you can manage within your home or your community. Then you won't need so many police. But now I guess the question turns to, who do we hold responsible in our communities if that is done?
If what is done, if the police
like if we defund the police and we take the police out of the mix on normal everyday kind of situations that we could potentially handle as a tribunal, as a village, as a community, how do you put those people in place?
If you are talking about bird watching while black, or just sitting on a bench and black and white people call on the police, you are talking about educating the white people. You are talking about when is it going to stop. Recently, I think there was an article in the Daily News today that of another incident when a nurse was just waiting for the 7 o'clock when you get the applause, sitting down, and a white woman called the police because she was sitting on a bench. It's like after all the protests. So who is and the police, to their credit, they just moved on. But what do you do? You have to educate. It's a matter of education. Ashley is right, and I think Marquis also said you have to educate people.
There's a ton of random jobs in existence in America all the time. We create jobs all the time. Where there's a need, you will create a position and you put the money behind it. Just like universities, maybe 20, 30 years ago, there were not offices of institution diversity and inclusion. Now that is a standard for most universities, and that is a job. The chief diversity officer was not a job that existed 40 years ago. They saw a need, they created the job, they put the money behind it. So excuse me, I have a dry throat, not coronavirus. But
I was
make that clear.
I just need some tea right now, but I'm okay.
I'm drinking water. I just have dry throat. But there is a need where, you know what, the white women in America are uncomfortable. They have a need. Let's create a job. When they call 911, they said there's someone who looks suspicious or their dogs are playing. This person is called the white woman safety officer. They're coming to your space to come to your need. You don't need the police for this. We've created a job for you because it's a policy thing. But defund the police, though, it could be a part-time job. I am a mediator for people who are in uncomfortable situations. How can I help you, ma'am? I know you're looking for the police, but let's talk about this. Why are you uncomfortable? You know what I'm saying? It is a very, I firmly believe all of our issues are man-made. We created these things. You know what I'm saying? If teachers actually were able to just teach, not be social workers, not be wrestlers, not feed the children, not all the hats that teachers have to hold, imagine what could happen. Imagine the delay in the burnout of the semester. Imagine if social workers didn't have to have 200 cases, and then when people die on their watch, they have no accountability for it. We can do whatever we want to do. It's the power structure of when we say these things, we offer these ideas of it's a visceral response, like protect and serve the flag. We need the cop. We need the, people start to panic at the thought of them not having the access to the police. That's rooted in education. We can reform the education, but in the active space, when the 911 operator gets this call, okay, this is for our safety officers. Go out there and check for them, because really, what have the police done to solve any of those issues? Right, man? You're upset. Why are you upset? Can you tell me where was the threat? You almost killed your dog because you were threatened. I'm here now. I'm listening to you. Let's talk, right? Instead of it being this whole national thing. We can create or dissolve any issues that we want to, and we solve them. It's whether people can support it and understand why there's another option that is better off. There is an extreme fear of change in this country for reasons I do not understand. We in the most digital age where you can literally see people implementing new things and positive change coming out of it. We see in these places where they reduce gun violence and how they've taken care of it. Quickly executed policy change has led to immediate positive decrease in the issues, right? So I don't know why in this country there's this issue with, okay, well, let's just change it up. It confuses me. But I've been saying, it's not a hard fix. Right. It's white women being able to assert their pain and whatever they feel, and there being an immediate immobilization of what they need that's the easy fix. Education and whatever, policy change.
Right. Kaia, you had something you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to add this. I'm going to work to make this as quick as possible. Several things. In 2004, I had the opportunity to hear Derek Bell, who was one of the civil rights lawyers, talk. Mm-hmm. And he basically said, I'm totally paraphrasing. He said, yeah, we did all this work and look where we are, almost in the same place we were in the 60s. And he explained it, and everybody in the audience was like, oh my gosh, Derek Bell, the civil rights attorney, said that? I thought we have overcome. And he said, you know what I discovered, and after I did all this work, is this system only allowed legislation or laws to pass that they knew that they could pull back, repeal, or change to benefit them again. And we are seeing exactly what he said in 2004. Right. So it just really makes me think about, because what I'm hearing from my father's age, they're saying this is like how it was in the 50s, in the 60s. how white people think that they could just pick up a phone, and the police have become beholden to this white nationalist idea that I could pick up the phone, make an indictment against a black person, and they'll get arrested. And I will use that. I will weaponize that. These nice words they're saying, right?
Right.
It makes me think. Yeah, it makes me think of. But I think this conversation has made me, because when you ask the question, well, who do you call if something goes down? I'm gonna do another thing. I'm sorry. I'm kicking into the southernness is kicking in. So please indulge me, y'all. Please indulge me.
Absolutely.
The summer that the year that Tupac got shot, I'm going back. Okay. The summer I worked in Compton as a lifeguard, it was a hot summer. People were getting killed left and right. Well, particularly in that summer, and I'm not from Compton. I'm not from that's whole other explanation. So I was in foreign territory, and if you know LA is very territorial, right? And there was a gangbanger who was messing with me. I was the manager at a pool. I was a lifeguard, and he robbed our pool and he stole the money. Now, I didn't care he stole the money, honestly, but because I didn't want to lose my job, I had to report it, because at the end of the day, you had to show how much money you made. So we had to report him. The police came and they said, well, who is it? You know, you had to point them out. I didn't point him out, but the cashier pointed him out. But everybody thought because I was the square, I was the one who pointed him out. So when his name was Cuckoo, that's what the banger's name. When Cuckoo got out of jail, which was like a week later, he came and he was packing heat. You know what packing heat is? He had a gun, all right? And I called halftime. Well, not one time with the police and the halftime with the park police. So it was the people who were in the park. So we called halftime, and halftime said, well, we're not going to come unless somebody gets shot. You're not going to come. And I'm telling you, this guy has a gun, and we turned him in and blah, 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 blah. The best justice I did is I called my father, because I remember my father stood in the middle of the park. You thought, what's this guy's name? Denzel Washington on Training Day? No. My father said, if this is my daughter, he's from the South, okay? If you mess with my daughter, I will kill you, your mama, your daddy, and your dog. And nobody mess with me at all. Now, of course, you probably can't do that today. But this is something Black people have had to step outside of this quote unquote justice system way before George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's and the It has been something that has been ingrained in us, that if we do call the police, we have a 50%, then maybe it's like 90% chance of we'll get arrested. Something detrimental will happen more to us than us actually getting serviced and served. On the other hand, white people have more so said, we are more likely when we call the police, will be protected by them. So that just made me think about this. And then this is it. And I'm going back on up. Rolanda, I'm going to give the mic back to you. Sit the cup down. Okay. So and I've been thinking about this, and this is in the vein of Frederick Douglass, who said something like, the slave master is as much enslaved as the slave, right? Mm-hmm. Another way to say it, and I have a sister who works in correctional facilities, and she said the first thing that she learned, and she's an accountant, so she doesn't deal with the inmates, and she does is their books or whatever, like the commissary, she works at the commissary. He said, what you got to learn is that you do the time with the inmates. And so this whole thing, we say these nice, wonderful, beautiful words, white privilege, white privilege, white privilege, white privilege. And I had a thought, white privilege does not mean freedom. No. It does not mean freedom. No. Right? You may have access to more stuff, but you're not free. White people, boo-boo, y'all not free. As long as there is a caste system and a hierarchical system, you will not be free because you are serving time with us.
I think that's it's very important that you mention that, because as you know, I work in the prisons as well, or used to. And that was my whole thing. I had a group of, you remember we brought the group in to work with the youth at the correctional facility. And of the staff that I brought in there, I would say about 95% entered into a depressive state or triggered some type of mental illness within them by the time the project was over. Because when you go into it's not just when you go into the facilities, but that interaction with a police officer could potentially trigger all types of trauma that has surfaced throughout your whole life. It becomes fearful for most people. So when you see a white person in particular weaponizing, like, you know, I don't like you telling me to put my dog on the leash, so I'm going to call the police and they're going to deal with you. It's not that you did anything wrong to me. It's that I don't like the way you were acting. You know what I mean? And how many Black people are plagued with that? I don't like the way you're behaving, so I'm going to call the police. It doesn't mean that you're breaking the law. It doesn't mean that you're being violent, but I don't like it, right? So how do we then protect ourselves? And I think that that's part of where these protests are coming from, because it's like, now, look, we can't do this anymore, right? We just can't. How many of us have to die in this way for us to get it? But I wanted to bring it back to Marquis, because I know we've been over talking you, Mr. Duncan. So I'd love for you to give your perspective, please.
I think a culmination of like what everyone was saying. Ashley made tons of great points. I think even is it Lisa? I want to call you wrong. Is it Lisa? I'm saying that right?
Who, me or
no.
Donna?
No, I'm sorry, Donna.
No, that's fine.
She mentioned, like, and so Ashley mentioned, you know, we call cops, and Ronnie said that we call cops for things that generally aren't crimes. And I'm thinking, like, as we mentioned, just roots of policing, like vagrancy laws, right? We do call the cops on homeless people, right? That's because vagrancy laws were on the books in the 1800s, right? Because Black people were homeless, right? So, like, again, we send these people into communities to arrest people for doing regular common things, or to arrest people just because they're oppressed, right? So, like, white people knew when they released slaves, but didn't give them land, didn't give them money, didn't give them property, anything, just sent them out. Of course they'll be homeless, right? Of course they'll have issues going on. Of course they'll maybe resort to trying to steal, right? And we see that present day in communities, right? So, like, there's so many social issues that plague Black communities. It's why you see criminality, right? It's what we talk about in criminology and criminal justice. Like, what is the reason for criminality, right? We can't just go, Black people commit crime more than white people, therefore they're criminals, right? No, there are roots to criminality, a lot of them rooted in white supremacy, right? Like, if unemployment is the highest in Black communities, yeah, people might steal, right? Like, if Black people are most likely to, if you don't put quality restaurants, quality grocery stores, right? If you don't educate Black people on healthy eating, they're going to have diabetes, right? They're going to have heart attack. They're going to have those issues. And so, yeah, just thinking around those things, I think about, as we remove policing as a starting point, right? And then again, like, restructuring how we talk about, renaming them, looking at it differently, it gives Black people a chance to rebuild their communities, right? You're not building your community and thinking about there's a pervasive threat coming in, right? You're not building your community with someone policing it, right? Like, I had white friends, I played tennis, and I had white friends who lived in the suburbs, and I would ask the question, you know, how often do you see police just casually ride through your streets? They're like, never, not unless you call them, right? And I was like, interesting, right? Because in Black neighborhoods, particularly neighborhood I grew up in, Charlotte, North Carolina, you would see a cop ride through 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, like, but you don't see that same thing in white communities, right? And so I think, yeah, if you remove policing or you shift it to, again, police officers for that community derive from that community, or at least community similar to it, you know, you don't get the issues of when white kids get stopped by white cops, he has a bright future. Oh, I work with his dad. Oh, I work with you going home now, right? And you just made a silly mistake. You won't get that. And then on the other end get, oh, this little Black boy stole from the store. Let's arrest him, right? Like that's like worthy of time. And so, yeah, just thinking through some of those thoughts, and even the part that Kaia mentioned about, like, white people, you're not free, right? White people, you're not free because a lot of times, because you're being oppressive, you have to sometimes sit in the oppression yourself. And I think that's an interesting interesting take on it, right? And I think about correctional officers, like, how much do you think about it as being, like, I know you mentioned, Rolanda, that people begin to feel or begin to develop depressive type symptom and states. Like, if we're talking about correctional officers who go into correctional facilities with the intent that I'm policing Black people in cages, right? Do you go to work and are you actually bothered, right? Like, if you're the white cop slamming the gate on people or corralling people into places and, you know, doing that, do you get to clock out? I did my due diligence to society today, because the belief again is that they are criminals. They deserve to be treated as such, right? Is it really mentally taxing to you, right? Because you believe that you're actually doing good work,
right?
You know. So, but that was just my thought. So,
I just want to agree with Kaia and with Marquis in terms of white people are not free as long as our brothers and sisters, minorities, are treated like this. And I think James Baldwin made that point a long time ago when he said that you can't be free when people are treated like that. So yes, and possibly deep inside, that's why I'm protesting, because I have two daughters. In the same way that my Black coworker said that he cannot sleep at night thinking that his children, because of the skin of their color, can be killed at random. I cannot accept a society where people are in chain. And you're absolutely right. No one is free as long as African Americans are treated like this. And slavery hasn't ended, I'm sorry to say.
Oh, not for any of us, actually. You know, we think that we have I think what we see with the protesters who are predominantly white, who are getting tear gassed, who are getting beaten. We saw the elder white man be pushed down and actually fractured his skull while the police
in Buffalo,
in Buffalo yesterday, right? So, is this what it takes for people to see? Do we have to see the police now brutalizing white people in order for us to say, hold on, you know, this is too much? Or is this it? Is this enough? It's like, are we committed as a group, as a community, as a people to say, this is it?
Hopefully not.
I mean, I can't think of any issue centered in a minority community that was resolved only by that minority community without allyship, outside of like the extreme slave revolts in like Haiti and things like that. Like, and I can't think of any history. Not like it's an unfortunate fact that you have to have white co-signing for there to be movement and traction and change on a structural level. But structurally, our system is based in white supremacy. So you have to have some sort of interaction with white people, say, okay, I don't like this either because it's affecting us too, change it. That's an unfortunate fact that we've seen repeated in a lot of minority group community issues.
Yes, because these are difficult conversations that we have to have around this, because from what Ashley suggested, it seems like there needs to be a multi-tiered approach to even fielding calls. Like, don't even call these motherfuckers, excuse my language, but like, don't even do it. Like, if you, and maybe it's not an issue then of defunding. Maybe it's just that we need to change our awareness in how we approach and interact with the police. Maybe don't call so much. Maybe don't call at all. Maybe go back to the days of the 50s and 60s where Black people in communities, they handled their own situations and did not invite others. And we still see that today in certain Asian communities and certain Latino communities, right? They have tribunals, they have tribes, they have things like that where they come in. So maybe it's not an issue to where we even have to take it to the policymakers. These are decisions, right? So if we say, I'm not dealing with the police. If me and my husband get into an argument and we're getting too loud, then I need to call my mama. or I need to call my uncle and see if they can come here, or, you know, because I don't want to see my whole family killed because we were talking too loud or having a party in the backyard. So what I also wanted to ask, though, is how much is this a criminalization of culture before we leave? Because one thing that we see is that Black people do things in a certain way. Latino people do things in a certain, white people do things a certain way when they are together. Sometimes when outsiders see those things, they may see them as abuse or criminal or what have you. And that this is my last question before we wrap up to pose to you guys. How much of it is that?
This is a question I feel very, very, very strongly about. Very, very strongly about, because as much destruction has been done in the ability for Black Americans to trace their roots, there are clear, like, just ancestral things that come out when Black people come in community that just happen instantaneously. That doesn't make sense to anybody else. You can poll 100 Black people from all across the nation, and there's just a couple of things that there's a collectivism. So it's like there is a community aspect in our community in and of itself, where I do know that we can not even please take care of issues within our community as they should, because we have an understanding of why these issues are going on. Like, and also we've had examples of us trying to do that, and y'all murdered them, and like the Black Panthers, or the origin of gangs was not for the purpose of what it's matriculated into. It was for protection, because we knew that we couldn't call the police, because the police, you'll die just for existing, just like you do right now. I do personally believe that too many people have just free range access to Black everything, and are able to utilize and monetize it and flip it and rewrite the history of it and take ownership of it without consequence. And so of all the communities that you can unite off of, hey, I'm Black, we're Black, here's our community. Like, it's just like, you know, if you're Korean and you move to a place, you're going to find somebody who is Korean because that is your community. Like that, it seems like for Black people, we are demonized when we want to have our community, or we're acting racist because I want to sit with my Black friend at lunch and I don't want to have lunch with my, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just so many examples of how when other people have commentary and impact on how our community is able to operate, how it creates a whole myriad of so many issues. Sorry, I get very upset about this because I just really wish sometimes, like, can y'all just leave us alone? Like, sometimes we just want to have a little peace without having to be bothered about it, without everybody's commentary, without having to explain ourselves, without having to code switch in spaces, without having to explain why, you know what I'm saying? There's just certain things I just wish that Black people could have, but like, we don't even have the time or the opportunity or the space to gather together and be like, hey guys, how can we work on ourselves? Because we're fighting so many things that are thrown, the decks of cards that are thrown at us. Is like, damn, we can't even have a barbecue in a public park without it being an issue. Like, I grew up in Brooklyn, we have block parties all the time. You know what I'm saying? Now Brooklyn is gentrified. All of a sudden hearing Caribbean music on the block it was a police call. That these are things that were never a thing. Like, if grandma sits on the block and you know it's getting late, we're just move the party down the block. We don't have to call the cops because it's getting loud. These are just things that people don't have the cultural context, but they have the access because we are the lifeline of America. They rely on us for everything, and that's a fact. But yeah, I do believe that we have the ability to take care of our issues internally without needing the police or anybody, really.
Marquis, did you want to add anything?
I'm very sorry for everything you said, Ashley.
Black culture is criminalized. Like, and I think that is the work of white supremacy, right? Is that, like, Black people are not supposed to be happy, right? You're supposed to sit in your oppressive and marginalized and discriminated state and deal with it and suffer, right? Because we know that white supremacy told the world that we were white people's burden while making racism ours, right? So, like, that is it, right? It's why we get the hashtag Black Boy Joy, right? Because Tamir Rice does get gunned down in the park for just being a kid, right? So it's why Christian Cooper, right, with a Harvard degree, educated, who just wants to watch birds in the park, right? You can't be happy and be Black in the country. It's a crime, right? It's a crime. You should be oppressed. You should be sad about your oppression. And guess what? We're going to make you solve your own problems about how to get out of it. So yeah, I think Black culture is criminalized partially because we know a lot of what happens with Black culture. It's envy, right? It's envy. They told you that your features were bad, right? They told you that why they go and get tans and dark skin, why they go and get implants and Botox and all those types of things, right? They wanted you to hate yourself while all the time envying the beauty you brought to the world, right? So, and that
We
is
have too much fun for them.
yeah, that's it, right? Because how can you be so oppressed for hundreds of years and still keep bouncing back, still being resilient, still loving, still caring, still sharing, still embracing, right? How do you do that, right? It's making people mad. These protests are peaceful because we keep trying to lie that they're not, but we keep seeing people handing out water, people handing out masks, people got sanitizer, right? You tired? Come on, I got like, you need to ride back to your car because police are detaining people, yeah, right? Like, Black people aren't meant to be happy. And I think, yes, our culture has always been criminalized. I think, yes, it's owning it, it's taking it back, right? I think Kaia mentioned that, right? I didn't have to call the police. I called my daddy and my uncle and they showed up and the problem was handled, right? That was it. That was it. And that can be happening, right? Native American people, they forced them on the little reservations and tribes, but they don't call police. They have their own tribunals, right? They deal with their own situations within their cultures. So, yeah, I think and I think it's ownership of space. Right, we talk about, like, if we get to, like, I don't have time to get to reparations conversation. We talk about ownership of space, right? What is ownership of space for Black projects that were designed to redline us and section us off from regular community, right? Is that our space that you give us? Is it Black people that are forced to have to move into white suburbs or because they make good money, which also isn't our space, right? So I always think about how do Black people create and carve our own spaces? That way we can do our own things within our own culture and community. So.
And when we create those spaces, how do we guarantee that people are not going to come and burn down the whole towns?
Because that's the fear.
I have questions.
That's
the fear.
Right? That we'll do all of this and yet for nothing because there's the fear there. So I mean, when you get down to it, we understand that there needs to be change. We understand that the change has to start with us, right? So what I want to do before we close this out is I want to go to each person and see, so what is the change that you're going to be? So we're going to start with Dr. Shivers here, who brought us all together, and then we'll just, let's end out with some positivity and light. We are people of the sun, so we will bring light always and forever to these struggles. So I want to go to everyone who's fighting this fight. Where are you?
So I want to just thank everybody. I'm just so honored to be here. I am so honored that you heard the call and you responded at a time where it's just an emergency situation and crisis. It means just so much. This media, this is hard work. We all know this. It is very, very, very hard work. And as a professor at a predominantly white institution, and sitting in meetings, and my Black world is literally on fire, and people want me to join a committee on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm like, fuck your diversity. Your diversity, equity, inclusion is right there out in the street. Excuse my language. Right. My change, I think, one, it's on multiple levels. For me personally, is that I have to exist honoring who I am at all times, whatever that is. So that's just like a metaphorical thing, and I'm just going to continue to have this platform for as long as I possibly can, and hopefully give it to somebody else who can just keep allowing these spaces where we need this critical, not only just dialogue, but also putting plans together and then putting plans into action. Because that's the part I think that dropped off after the 70s is that we had all of these great ideas and we could theorize and talk about, all these theories, but a lot of things weren't put into action, because crack hit. That crack made the community go whoop whoop. There's so many, and that wasn't intentional. So I would say just keep the platform going, keep conversation, just remain as resolute as I possibly can, and honor myself when I get tired and take a break.
Self-care. Thank you, Kaia. Dana?
I'm humbled. I am ashamed. But I started saying something very interesting recently. So I said that I've been in America for 25 years, and I've been a citizen since 2000. Wow, 20 years. And this is the first time when I started being proud for being American. So I would like to continue this, and I would like to continue to be proud, and I would like to be engaged. I finally found some purpose. I always I'm going to use the M word. I'm a Marxian, and everything I wrote is from that perspective. I'm very aware of socioeconomic structures and the struggle, the class struggle, and of course I have my problems, because I believe that that is the first type of societal problem that needs to be addressed. In America, there is a racial component to the socioeconomic struggle that is rarely talked about, and it's more acute and it's different. And for some reason, people are kept apart instead of being united. And as hard as it is, without being together in it, without solidarity, we cannot achieve anything. And I think in America, the system has succeeded in keeping us apart and being afraid of building coalitions. And I think that's why we haven't achieved too much in changing the system, because we haven't been able to see where we are united. And I think I'm going back to what Rolanda said, and that made me think of James Baldwin. If we don't have this understanding, I don't know, I don't want to sound presumptuous, but if the white people don't understand that as long as there is this terrible, despicable situation of subordination that minorities are kept in, the slavery situation applies to all of us who are not the 1%. We are all enslaved. And I learned that, hey, at Rutgers, I had only one friend, so I better stand up for my friend.
Can I just really quickly respond? I think part of what we need to do, and I would say, and this is something that I want to do, is change the lexicon, the language. I don't particularly use even the term minority, because minority is, to me, a language that
yes, absolutely. I'm sorry.
Yes. No, it's not. I mean, this is something that is ingrained. But I would like to introduce two phrases that we could implement in our daily lives, right?
Right.
Okay. So being here in Italy, and listening to the history, when Rome was fighting the Carthaginians? Hannibal in there.
Yes, Hannibal, the Carthaginians, yes.
Basically the African. They were like, stop coming up in here and having all these babies.
And they were so much better than the Romans.
Yes. And their greeting was, Carthage must fall. And I said, well, what if we begin to embed in our language something? So it's two things. Black is love. So if I see you and I say black is love, you can respond and say black is a soul. So those are two things, or instead of me saying yes, like to some of the people who've heard me say this, instead of saying yes, I'll say perfectly black. That's perfectly black. So those are three things that I'm offering. Black is love, black is a soul, and perfectly black. So those are things we could begin to start just, putting into our language to raise the vibration around blackness.
We have two more. Ashley, would you like to say anything?
Sure, I'll try to be respectful of everyone's time, but I just say something I've implemented already is whenever I see young Black girls, I always compliment them on their natural hair, because it's already hard fighting oppression, white supremacy, and you already don't see yourself as beautiful. I take that time out, no matter if she needs a retouch up, rebraid, doesn't matter. You are beautiful regardless of what you see. That's something I always do. Two, when I talk to the youth, I always try to hear them out And then I also try to bring awareness and knowledge to their power, and also when they're Black, their history, because it is erased, and you have to find it, and you have to dig, and you don't find out till later on in life. And I want to empower the youth right now when I see it. And the last thing is I never shut up. If you're around me and you have something to say and it's problematic, or I have the receipts and you're wrong, and it's just a good time for re-education, I don't ever shut up about it. I don't care where we are. I will always use my voice to advocate for the truth and for education and an enlightenment. Now, sometimes it ends up me in a Facebook comment back and forth with somebody who is never going to get it. However, someone can read the comment and be like, oh my God, what is the Tulsa Massacre? Let me look it up. Something I personally believe that you can never plant too many seeds of education or of enlightenment. It may not be that day they're going to look it up, but maybe 5 years or 5 months later, something's going to help it click. And hopefully that'll stem a change with whoever you're with, and they'll start having those conversations, because I chose to have the conversations. I don't ever shut up about these issues that can be brought to the forefront. So that's just what I do or try to do.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Marquis.
Yes, and I'll be quick as well. So as far as change, Ashley and I, funny enough, our university went to University of North Carolina, Wilmington, a nice little country club looking PWI in the South in North Carolina, and they decided to make a post 2 days after George Floyd's lynching, and the post was, in light of what's happening in the world, we want to take a moment to acknowledge the small things. And bring attention to the things that are underappreciated. So please share with us some of the good stuff that's happening in your life. And white people in the comment, I got my UNCW flag. I made my child can't wait to go there. In light of what's happening in the world, you mean the murders happening? You mean the protests in the streets? So we took to it, and we tore the university apart about it, and we didn't expect the reaction we got from it. We end up making an unofficial alumni affinity group. We garnished over 500 signatures to go to the university within 24 hours. It got the post taken down, it got an apology issued from the university, and it got a statement actually given from the chancellor in regards to what's happening in the world, right? And people still tore that apart. And so what they did was create a momentum, because a lot of our Black alums we leave the campus and we don't return back and advocate. And so right now, we've had, Ashley and I, this is our third or fourth Zoom call today, because we've been in so many meetings about the university and changing it. And so that was one front. And really quickly, my career. So we talked a lot about education. I'm an English language arts teacher for a all-Black charter school network in DC. And so if we think about racism, it's being taught, right? We know it's a social construct. People have to teach it. We learn it subconsciously. I do the same thing in my classrooms. So I have Black HBCU pennants in my room, right? All my reading small groups are named after HBCUs. When we do the study of the chapter about Great Depression, and the curriculum gave me all pictures of dusty-faced white people looking real sad, I told my kids, Black people been looking sad and dusty-faced. But here, let me give you the real facts, right? Black people were fired during Depression for white people, right? Let's give you that context about your history. And so I use my leverage as being an educator to teach them what the curriculums in American education won't, to actually give them, right? So we're talking about social justice. I did my own class lesson on that. We did the trash can game. You sit up here in the front of the room, you sit at the back of the room. All right, shoot the ball into the trash can. Okay, well, but it ain't fair, Mr. Duncan. He's closer, right? He's closer, right? He has a more advantage than you. He's a little bit more privileged, and we can actually have conversations around that, right? So what social group sits in the back of the classroom to shoot the ball? Well, Black people, Latino people, one girl, LGBT people, right? And like, how do we fix those issues? I start that dialogue as early as 5th and 6th grade with them, so they're a little bit more aware when they move forward. So that's all I got.
So in closing, what I just wanted to do, first of all, is thank you guys all for participating. You guys added some perspective, some much needed perspective on this. And I think that we can all agree that maybe the best thing to do, for right now at least, just don't call the police anymore. There's power also in not saying anything, right? We can speak up and we can chant, but sometimes the most powerful thing to do is just turn your back on a toxic situation. And this is the most toxic of toxic situations. So maybe what we can take back to groups who are protesting, groups who are harmed by this, is let's think about making our own networks. Let's think about who we can call, we can put, the names up on it. If this happens, call Joey. If this happens, call Mom. Maybe it's just as simple as that, because police officers, that's just their jobs. They're not. That's it. They're just people who have jobs, and anybody can get fired from their job if it's unnecessary. If it's non-essential, then they don't need to be working during COVID, right? And so.
However, I'm sorry, Rolanda. However, George Floyd was just killed. Exactly. No one called them.
Well, no, they did call the police on him. Yeah, for the counterfeit money. And
you're right. I'm sorry. Yes.
So they did call the police, and also the owner did come and say he'll never call the police again. So maybe that's where we start, and maybe that's what we can take back to the groups that are protesting and things like that. Maybe it's just enough is enough. But until we solve this dilemma, we all have our work to do. So like I said, thank you guys for taking time out of your day, out of your time to protest and raise your voice and just give everybody some clarity. So I thank you for that.